when I started out, I had a fairly rigid system of what I'd call the 3 days. So on one day I would record, the second day I would edit it, the third day I'd just relax while it uploaded, and then it would cycle back around to day one, which is record, edit, upload.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Metaverse Degen. I'm Lion, and we have no Raptor. He's working with a plumber on a few things, but we are here joined by our fantastic guest.
Good evening. The name is Zombie.
Hello, Zombie. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to be able to meet and speak with you, so thank you for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. So let's just jump into the meat and potatoes of the conversation. What are you known for? How'd you get started, and what got you into VRChat?
Well, starting with what I do, I am but a small YouTube creator of horror content, specifically around the world of virtual reality chat, as there is no shortage of horror to be experienced, and one thing that I particularly enjoy is going through the different worlds of horror, be they good, bad, anywhere in between, and giving them the best squeeze I can, get as much out of them as I possibly can, see what there is to see, and then moving along to the next.
Wow. So what got you started with making YouTube content in horror, and what got you into VRChat?
Well, I didn't start with VR as my content. Initially, my first couple of videos many years ago were just simple clips of things I've done here and there on other games. But then, back when I was with my girlfriend, she often never got time to play video games, so I would record gameplay for her and throw it up onto the YouTube channel for her to watch when she got back from work. I went through quite a few games, none of them VR at the time, and after a little while of doing that, I stopped, and eventually one day decided, you know what, I'm just gonna start doing content again, but what do I want to do? And I was on VR at the time, plus COVID was coming to an end, so I decided, well, why not do VR stuff since I'm on here a lot, and why not do horror? And I started off doing horror content in earnest there. My content is simply just going from horror to horror world at that point. If it has a horror tag or anything similar, I will consider it somewhere to go at some point. And from there, I just continued.
Oh, wow. That's actually a really awesome reason to be starting doing content, and very sweet of you to do that. How did you find VRChat, and what made you choose to do horror worlds once you've joined?
I mean, I got into VRChat just as many other people did back in 2020, though I did play for maybe a couple of days long before 2020. I think I got online once, and that was probably during the time of the Great Knuckles clicking thing era. I forget. I completely forget the name of. I completely forget. They were Knuckles, though, and they had silly faces and they clicked a lot. Turned up there, I didn't have VR at the time. Then, once 2020 rolled around and no one was allowed to go outside anymore, you either played Animal Crossing, Doom, or Virtual Reality Chat. I played Animal Crossing and VR Chat. As
Oh,
for why I picked horror, well, it was just a spur of the moment, I guess. I mean, I could have done adventure maps, I could have done puzzle maps, but I guess I just enjoyed the idea of just going through the spooky world and seeing how the many different forms of horror are envisioned in different creators' minds.
hmm. Okay. So, around the beginning of the time you started doing horror worlds, what were some of the first places you went to in your for your videos, or that inspired you, may I ask? And what have been some of your favorites?
So, the first one I remember very specifically was the Tower of Terror. There were many iterations of it, but the Tower of Terror is a fairly simple map. I remember playing the Tower of Terror, if anything, long before virtual reality chat. It was a Gmod map.
Oh,
Gary's mod, good times. There was a Tower of Terror map there, and while I was looking for content to potentially record, I saw the Tower of Terror as something I could visit, and not only was it nostalgia for me, but it was also something I could easily use as my first kind of jumping off point to see if I would get into it properly or not. After that, I went to the Starlight Hotel, which was also a wonderful little horror experience. I can remember quite a few maps. There were many good ones. There are not many bad ones. There are lesser ones, but none that are truly bad. At least, not many. But as for favorites, I mean, that's a difficult one. After all, anytime I say I've got a favorite, a new one turns up.
Oh, okay. So, how do you normally structure your videos when you visit a horror map, and what kinds of things do you look for when you enter a world? How do you play or dissect it in your content?
So typically, how I'd do a map, first of all, is looking for a map. So the first thing I do is I would obviously look for a map with the tag labeled horror. That's how I would find a map I want to do. I would just use the tag search, and I would find there's currently 1,188 at this moment with the horror tag. I know that because I recently checked, like yesterday, so it's probably more now. But I would check for maps with the horror tag, and if it had the horror tag, that was already good enough. That meant it met the criteria I require to visit it at all. So at that point, whether it was good or bad, I wouldn't know. I never preemptively scout a map. I don't join it and look around before doing it. I will always decide, okay, this map will do this one because I haven't done it yet. And with the amount there is, there's no shortage of that. But I would select a map, I would make sure my stuff is ready, and I would hop straight in, as sometimes when you load into a world, you have an intro. Like some horror maps have an intro where you are just immediately in. Some have a start screen. Some just leave you in the middle of a forest. Many different types, so it's good to always just be prepared to get straight into it if need be. And from there, it's simply treating it as the average player experience, just going through the map as any other player would.
Hmm. Okay. Well, thank you for explaining that. I do have another question. It's going to be a little layered. So, what has been some of the sorry, let me rephrase this. What is it like, and what are the differences between the content you started with playing video games for your girlfriend to doing VR horror? Is there any difference between your two styles of content where you started and where you are now? And what were some of the difficulties when doing this kind of content or YouTube content in general?
So, the stuff I did beforehand, for example, I basically just did Let's Plays, and I didn't do them particularly well because I very, very much did not edit them down, which is something that I wouldn't do these days. I mean, it was usually just gigantic chunks of hour-long videos, which would be taken. Anything that was glaring I would take out, but for the most part it would just go straight up onto YouTube, and then it was there for her to watch. As for the virtual reality ones, though, that's a bit more of a difficult one, as in the world of VR, so many things can go wrong quite easily. So one of the first things I did was I immediately learned how to do video editing, as it was best to make sure that videos were cleaned up. Obviously, it's very easy to hide the mistakes and smooth out the video, which definitely helps the pacing of the video.
Okay. So, was getting to video editing something that was easy or natural for you to get into, or was it different in terms of like going from hour-long Let's Plays into polished content?
So it always seems like a bit of a scary process of going from it's a chunk of 1 hour footage down to, oh, I can make this 10 minutes. And the thing is, it's never that bad. The most difficult point of any of it was just getting the software in the first place, because finding good editing software for cheap is not easy. I eventually circled my way over to, like, I started with DaVinci, but then I moved to Wondershare, and I haven't stopped using it. But I don't really like Wondershare, they keep asking for more money anytime they say, hey, what would you rate us? I always give them a 1 and tell them to stop asking for my goddamn money. But the main thing is, it always starts the same way. It starts with just take a section, cut it, toss it, take a section, cut it, toss it. And from there you'll go, I wonder if I can put an image here. Or maybe I can put a small blur here. And then as you kind of do those things, it eventually goes to, I wonder if I can do X. And from going, I wonder if I can do X, slowly you build up your repertoire of editing, which always, from what I'm aware of, starts at just taking a block of content and cutting it into pieces and tossing out what you don't need.
Hmm. How long did it take you to be comfortable with what you were editing and creating, may I ask? Or, yeah.
I mean, it didn't take long. Like, the first video, I remember editing the Tower of Terror. It didn't really need much besides just cutting some little bits out here and there just to make sure that any of the parts that went on for too long were removed. But it wasn't bad. It was a fairly smooth process, and it wasn't difficult or even that strenuous. It was rather enjoyable. But then the next episode I did, which was the Starlight Hotel, something I started doing was I was like, okay, I can cut. And the Starlight Hotel has a lot of doors that you go through. They are transition doors, and they don't have sound, and they don't have a actual transition. It's just a snap of the finger and you're through the door. So one thing I started doing is going, okay, I can put a cut when I go through the door, and I can have a 0.25 second long fade, and just let that be the actual door transition. So at that point, I'm like, okay, now I can put little transitions here where it seems like I've actually gone through the door instead of just teleported, which adds a bit of immersion to the video. And the next video, I kept doing the same things until it's like, oh, a sound effect here is missing, I can quickly throw that in. Or, oh, this can be zoomed in here a little bit more, I can do that. And just over time, you don't really notice until you look back that you've actually gained quite a few skills.
Hmm. Okay. Now, when remembering some of the worlds you've been in, are there any moments or things that world builders and VRChat horror that have stuck with you that really stood out to you, may I ask? What kinds of things make VRChat horror unique or fun to do?
I mean, that's a difficult one because everyone has their own unique taste when it comes to horror. You can take two people and you can give them the same jump scare and they'll probably both scream at it, but for the most part, when it comes to horror, people are scared by different things most of the time. Not only that, but depending on the scenario you're thrown into, that also adds extra layers of what scares a person. I mean, it's very difficult to nail down most of the specifics. I mean, for myself personally, I'm very difficult to scare. Like, sometimes jump scares will get me, sometimes certain things will get me. But it's not so much the scares that I really look forward to as much as seeing the creator's vision of what they believe is scary.
Hmm. Okay. Or is there anything that you enjoyed that when you saw what a creator thought was scary that has stood out? What kinds of things make a horror world stand out normally? At least to you.
I mean, for the most part, ambience. That's one of the main things. A build up to horror. I mean, you can do the Freddy Fazbear thing of just having a spooky jump scare where you have a fluffy animatronic jump at the camera and yell ooga booga booga like your Courage the Cowardly Dog. And to an extent that can work. I mean, it will scare children, no doubt, I'm certain, or maybe Markiplier if he thinks he needs a bit more content, but it's not the most effective horror from what I've seen. Like, jump scares are the very much plain pun of horror, but good ambience can make a jump scare that would be plain otherwise a lot more impactful and a lot more of a memorable moment because the feeling of dread and the dense atmosphere of a map can make horror infinitely more scary if done correctly.
Hmm. You saying that reminded me of a world I went to during Halloween that did that very well, which was the fears test, where you kind of jump in and you're in a dark room and a text that would is like, "Are you this? Do you do that?" And you'd answer a series of questions and you'd go into each map. And the ambience it is very well, the sounds, where they put you, tight corridors, where the map itself was doing more of the scaring than any jump scares. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
So it's more along the lines of take the locker room for an example. When you're moving through the locker room before you hit the point where it sends you back to the black room, there is a creeping sense of dread as you are separated from everyone and you are forced to walk through these unsettling areas where you feel like there is something else in here with you. If you can be put into a room and one of the things you're thinking is, what else is in here with me? The map creator's already done some of his job better than he can imagine.
Oh. So, how many what are some examples of worlds that have done ambience well to you?
So, one in particular that I enjoy that has done ambience incredibly well is by Official Scion, which is Unshattered Destinations, I believe. The map name specifics avoid me, but it is a map that is taking place in a rather large house. It's got a few fun Easter eggs here and there that will kind of break the tension a little bit, which are nice, but they're very rare. But for the most part, it is a wonderful setting of built ambience, in my opinion, of building up the tension of horror.
Hmm. So, in this specific example from Official Scion, what are some things they did in the ambience? May I ask? I'm not sure I visited that one.
So, for the most part, sound design is one. I mean, it can be a dead silent hallway, and that would obviously be unsettling, but the settling of the house, the muted music that isn't even really music, just the ambient noises of a silent house is much better than a map with no noise whatsoever. You've also got the lighting, which is done well, because if there's one thing I always say, it's that good lighting is paramount to horror, because darkness can be effective in horror, but darkness should not be used to provide the actual scares of horror. It should only be an ingredient, which was done correctly there. There's also the build-up of what's to come, along with giving you hints of what might show up, but not throwing them at you until you might believe it might not come, or at the height of the tension. For example, let's take Amnesia the Dark Descent. It's a classic. There are cases where the monster is visible in very extreme scenarios before you ever actually encounter it proper. Like you can see a glimpse of a shadow, you can see the outline of something. And that is much more effective than just going, here's the monster, it's going to now smack you on the butt. It's letting the imagination do the work for you with the build-up of the ambience is the best way to describe it. It is putting you in a scenario where your brain is trying to help you rationalize what's in here to stop it being as scary, and it's not working.
Hmm. Okay. So, I have a question as well in terms of that. How is VR horror different from what would be like flat screen, like what you'd find on a TV? Have you experienced? Do you prefer both, or do you like one over the other?
Well, when it comes to the differences, I've had some experience with both. I mean, for example, I've played Amnesia, which is a great game. But when it comes to virtual reality horror, it's a bit more different because you are actually your character. For example, I can reach out my hand and pick something up, unlike through a flat screen. It puts you into the world, and a good horror map is able to trick you into forgetting that you are not in virtual reality for a moment. It tricks you into thinking you are there, and the thing that is in the dark isn't going to just boo you through the screen. It is actually going to come for you, the person standing in the middle of this virtual space, which is a lot more scary when it is done correctly.
Hmm. I remember my first experience with VR horror was I think it was Resident Evil Biohazard, for PlayStation. I played the flat screen and thought this was great, but then I hopped into the VR portion. It felt so different. Something about it just pulls you into it. It was scary. You could hear, like, for example, the boss fight with Father when he's behind you and you're trying to run around circles and avoid him. That was a lot more terrifying in VR than it was actually seeing on flat screen because I don't know, something about it just VR horror just draws you in a little more based on like just kind of adding to what you said.
Yes, it's again, it's kind of a it's a big difference, not kind of, it just is a big difference because one is you are safe behind a screen. In VR, you are in that space, even though you do have the screen technically inside your headset, you are at the center. You are able to hear in surround sound. You are not able to just turn off the monitor. You can take off the headset, but at the time of the experience, the monsters are coming after you. You can see them coming from the left, the right, the front. You can hear them coming from behind. It's a lot more of a surreal experience because it feels like you are the target, not just the thing in the screen.
Hmm. Were there any VR experiences or horror games that have startled you or put you into the moment? May I ask?
I'd say there've been a few. For example, the ones made by Official Scion. Those are very, very good maps. He has done wonderful work trying to develop how he does horror. He even took some time to study how horror works and how it interacts with people. There is also Sarah, who has done some incredible works. There are quite a few big name horror content creators who you take note of when you dip your toe into the horror pond for long enough. Some of the bigger names start to stick with you. For example, It's Crispy is also one of them. I'd say It's Crispy is definitely part of the big ten of horror content creators, along with Official Scion or Sarah or You Are Amazing, who created the Backspace series, and so on.
Oh wow. So since you started doing horror content, do you view horror content or like horror games and stuff that you would play any differently than you would before?
Not really, no. I try to just keep my content as simple as I'm just another player going through it, you're just experiencing it with me.
Okay. So from when you first started to now, has your style of content changed at all? How did you start and how did you change over time?
So, a little while ago, I had one of my friends join me in horror. She would join me through the maps. So, for example, two-player horror maps were possible, but it was also a case of allowing me to add more reactions, more general viewing experience. And what I would do is I would take her lump of footage, take mine, and it would be progressional, so it would all be one giant lump, but it would have parts my reaction, parts her reaction, and a flipping POV to go between them. So that way I was able to catch more of the map, because two pairs of eyes is a lot better than one when it comes to trying to see as much as you can.
Oh,
But lately she's become busy, and life has transpired to get in the way, so I'll probably be returning to just myself.
okay.
Which, other than that, there's no real changes to how I really play through. It's very much a case of go to the map, play it, see everything there is, and give my thoughts and opinions on the map at the end.
Hmm. Okay. So when you're going through the map or recording a video for a map, do you try to react or speak a certain way to the camera so that like to make good content, or you what do you do in order to try to like make the content, or you try and give it genuine reactions and then you said explain at the end?
So, I don't pay any attention to the camera or even try to interact with the audience. I sit myself into the map, and once I hit record, I push the fact I'm recording out of my head entirely. At that point, I'm recording, I know that, but I'm in this map, and there is an experience to be had. I'm blind to it. I'm always blind to my horror experiences because the thing about horror is you can never truly experience a horror experience twice. You can only really experience it once. And so I make sure that all of the maps I go to are ones I've never visited before. And through there, I just sit myself into the map and I go through as though I were just another person trapped in that horror map.
Okay. Now, over the course of your content, were there any moments or videos you were most proud of or you look fondly to?
I would say there are definitely a few. I mean, the Uncharted Destinations one, I'm particularly proud of. That one took quite a bit of editing to do. I had to break it into 4 parts. Typically, I can do maps in just one video, but sometimes they'll split into 2. That one I had to split into 4. There's also the Smile Room video I did, which was one of the videos I did with my friend, which was one of my first major kind of trying to make sure the POVs were spread out and the timeline was perfect. So it was more of an editing masterpiece than anything that I was happy with. Another one I enjoyed was the Tower of Terror because humble beginnings. And pretty much most of the maps I remember pretty fondly. I do enjoy them all. I mean, there are obviously going to be some that leave things to be desired, but overall it's been a wonderful experience.
Hmm. Okay. So, with that said, how long does it normally take you to process and put out a video, Mass? What kind of work goes into the kind of content that your audience sees?
So, back when I started out, I had a fairly rigid system of what I'd call the 3 days. So on one day I would record, the second day I would edit it, the third day I'd just relax while it uploaded, and then it would cycle back around to day one, which is record, edit, upload, edit, upload. And that would be my schedule, but as I became better at editing, the longer the editing process would slowly become, and eventually it did slowly become 4 days, then 5 days. But I typically kept at least one, maybe 2 uploads a week. But lately, my upload schedule had fallen apart quite heavily, which I am absolutely going to be remedying in the very near future. But that was typically the process. And as for the amount of time it took to edit, that that's very much a case of depending on the map, as there are many horror maps in VRChat. Some of them are built where they already have all of the sound effects, they have map transitions, and they don't have too much in terms of just walking around doing nothing. Those maps, I'm simply able to just cut a few things out, just do a couple quality checks, and then push it straight out the door. But then you have some maps where there are next to no sound effects, no background music, no transitions, plenty of time where it's just you walking around, or you lost in the dark, which happens a lot, or items that are incredibly out of the way, or even hidden in obnoxious places that can take, in some cases, maybe even over an hour to find if you're just hopelessly lost in the dark, which can also happen. At that point, the editing process can stretch depending on what type of map you get.
Hmm. Now, with maps like that, or do you artificially add your own sound effects and music and stuff? How do you fill that void of lack of ambience, I guess is the way to put it?
Hello, I'm actually here to interrupt the episode you're watching really quick to ask you a favor. Please come join us at any of the other locations we have. You can find us on YouTube and Spotify, both of which we post our episodes and are very up to date on both. We have Discord where you go to hang out all the time, where you're gaming and shooting the breeze over with many people over that way. Feel free to come join us. I invite you. If you wish to support us, we have a Patreon where we post a bunch of random bits, bobs, and extra podcast every once in a while for you to go enjoy. Also, if you wish to support us while in VRChat, we're now part of the creator economy. So please come join if you wish to support us there. It's there for you to choose if you so wish. And thank you very much. And a special thanks to some of the people who have signed up on our Patreon, which are as follows, and I have written down so I'll remember. And that's a tough thing. Forbidden Zero, Niche, Aliquum, Future Oracle, Lesser Capybara, and Frozen. Thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
So, I'm able to kind of draw this parallel because I recently did this actually. Back in October, there was a map I did, and I believe it was called Existence or Existential. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a map in a ye olde mid-cent. I can't speak. Basically, there were nights. You're in an old haunted castle. Once we got in, the first thing we noticed is that there was no background music whatsoever. Anything we interacted with had no sound effects, and the lighting wasn't great either, admittedly, but there's not much you can do about lighting besides just having decent gamma, or in some cases turning up the headset's brightness, which is not too bad to do. But for the most part, in maps where the effects are forgotten and transitions are forgotten and background music is forgotten, those are some of the key staples of having a good horror map. And so if you have a horror map where there's no background music, you can't hear the ambience of maybe the waves of the nearby water or the sounds of a faint breeze or the weather or the floorboards creaking beneath you, things like that, and it's just too silent, that can completely hamper a good horror experience. So what I did was, the first thing I did is I sat down, I was like, okay, this map maybe took 2 hours to do. I edited it down to less than an hour, it was maybe 45 minutes. Okay, maybe editing it shouldn't take too long. Editing all of the sound effects and getting the video ready took me, I think, 12 hours of editing just to make sure all the sound effects were put back in. Like making sure all the sound effects were back in, putting background music in, making sure the cuts were correct, the transitions were smooth. It was one of my longer projects.
Oh,
And if I didn't do that, then the video would have absolutely suffered for it.
Now, after you added those sound effects in the video and post-processing, did the map look or feel any different to you after you added those sound effects in that exact same experience?
I would say so, yes, as it's basically night and day. I mean, one thing I got was one of my friends who I talk with every now and again. He mentioned that he watched the video and I asked him, "Hey, can you tell if I did any of the can you tell if I did any of the sound effect edits just to see if they were good?" And he asked if I did any at all because he couldn't find any, and I was like, okay, that means I've done a good job, because if you can't tell that I put those in there, then that means that I've done a good job and the map seems good at that point. The video was correct. Like, the sound effects are in there. It feels like an actual horror video experience you can enjoy. There's atmosphere now, there's sound effects, there's things in the background that you can hear that are actually there in the map that are now announced through the video, which weren't when I went through it on my own.
Okay. Now, by projects like that, what kinds of things did you learn about horror sound design, Mass? Because if you did it that well, what are some tips and tricks in terms of making something seem better with sound?
Again, it comes down to which horror map you're in. So some horror maps I've done where I've gone to space, and in some scenarios where you're in space, having the background music entirely muted, but still like muted down but not silent, as though, there's no sound in space, adds to the whole, okay, we're in space type thing. Along with having a bit more of a cleaner sound, maybe the sound of metallic, like your feet tapping on metallic floorboards, or if you're in a castle, having the sound of your feet going against maybe older tiles or maybe wooden floorboards also adds to the age of the building. You can immediately go, okay, this is adding to the fact that this place seems older. There's also the weather, for example. You can have a faint breeze, which gives the world life automatically compared to having none. You can hear the world. There is also the ability to add sound effects, for example, a door opening and closing. Just that alone already makes a door far better than just a silent click your fingers, you're through the door, especially if you've added a minor transition to get through it. The sound design in and of itself is one of the biggest building blocks of horror content and something that is required to have good horror. The sound of something in the distance, the sound of something just breathing behind you, the sound of something just barely out of your hearing range to unsettle you for even a moment will add to a horror experience than a completely empty house with nothing in it or no sound. I mean, you've got some horror experiences where all you have is that sound and you've got no monsters and you are constantly left on edge because you hear that there's something there. You hear there is something potentially in this house and it is making your brain think of all the things it could be, but it's not actually there. It's just the house building the tension until they can put you in a place where it knows it will want you to interact with it.
So with the sound design, with the sound design that you're explaining to us, is that something you've innately kind of knew, or is this or something you learned over time?
I wouldn't say I've learned it. I have very basic understanding of sound design. It's more along the lines of just the feel of the map and how it should feel in that moment. Again, it's down to the map you've gone through, the thing you're going through, experiencing at the time. That is typically where you'd go, okay, this should sound like this, but there's no sound here. This should sound like this, but it doesn't. I should be able to hear this, but I can't. It's just things that seem like they're missing, and you're able to go, okay, if I put them back, it suddenly feels correct.
Okay. So are there any worlds or places you visited that do sound design correctly?
So I would say it's Crispy's worlds. For example, you've got the Smile Room, you've got the Smile Room demo, you've got Fears. Those are all excellent examples of good sound design. You also have You Are Amazing's Backspace 1 and 2. The second one having a lot more of a cleaner sound design. The first one definitely showing a bit of its age, but it is definitely good for its sound design. You've got Official Scion's latest maps. Those have wonderful sound design as well. They build up clearly, concisely, and they unsettle you. You've also got Sarah's, where there's just something nagging at you, but you can't quite put your finger on it. There are many such cases of creators who have managed to nail down ambience, which is something essential to good horror.
Okay. So another question for you is what keeps you going and want to come back to creating VRChat horror content or VR horror content in general? What makes you want to keep processing and going this far?
It's just the typical enjoyment of it. It's just something I thoroughly enjoy in general. I didn't think I'd enjoy horror as much as I have, but now I get to see how people typically go about creating these experiences, and being able to share them is something I enjoy.
Okay. So may I ask another question as well? As over the course of you doing content with some of the updates to VRChat's engine and how people have improved, have the horror maps changed as VRChat grew with their engine mask?
I wouldn't say it's grown through the engine mask or anything like that. If anything, it's been pretty much unnoticeable. Horror maps may break with the updates, but they don't typically change.
Hmm.
All that really changes is the experiences that are built from how the creators of those maps go through making more and more horror content.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for explaining that. And another question I'll ask as well is from the journey you've explained to us so far, did you expect to be where you're at once you put on the headset in the beginning, back during COVID?
Not really, no. Then again, I didn't have any expectations. I simply made content for my girlfriend to entertain her while she wasn't able to do any gaming herself. It was pretty much her YouTube channel, and all I wanted to do was just make her smile, and anyone else who watched along the way, well, that was a bonus.
Now, have you had any interactions with your audience who watch your content, may I ask?
I've had a couple. I've managed to meet a couple good friends. For example, I've met Dragon Wolf, and I even met one of the names I mentioned earlier. You are amazing through it, as going through the maps, you slowly do get noticed here and there. I mean, I've even managed to get a hello from Official Scion by doing one of his maps. And it's always nice to see those. I mean, I've managed to make good friends with You Are Amazing, who did the Backspace series, and I even managed to get get myself a little role in doing some voice acting in the Backspace 2 map, which was fun to do.
Ooh.
I even have my own little monument inside his maps, which always makes me smile to see.
Oh, what was the experience of voice acting like when you did that?
It was fun. I haven't really done voice acting before. It was odd, but it was also nice to know that my voice was good enough to be part of anything in general, really.
Oh, now what was the part that you voice acted, Mask?
I believe I voice acted one of the scientists of the month or something. There's a wall of scientists who have accomplished great things, and I can't quite remember what mine had done. But I do know that through the interactions I had with the map creator and how I went through some of his older maps, I'm the reason why he doesn't allow flashlights near his mannequins anymore. So that was fun.
What do you mean you're the reason that flashlights aren't allowed near his mannequins?
Um, so in some of his older maps, including Backspace 1, me and my female friend who did horror with at the same time, we would often bully the mannequins. We could always tell when a mannequin scare was coming. It was something we kind of learned how to expect. Some things in horror you can just kind of predict.
Hmm.
So we eventually were like, okay, well, how can we bully these mannequins? I know, we have a flashlight, and I know we have spares up ahead. I know where I'm going to stick this flashlight, and we'd always bully the mannequins. And so, in Backspace 2, the map creator did his best to keep flashlights as far away from mannequins as possible because he knew I would bully them again. He failed.
You still played the mannequins.
It was very entertaining, his reaction when we managed to circumvent no flashlights near the mannequins.
How do you respond to you're finding a way to bully the mannequins still?
All I can say is I look forward to seeing how he tries to stop me with Backspace 3.
Fair enough. So you said something interesting I'd like to play upon the predictability of horror. What kinds of things are predictable, and what are some examples of people either using predictability or not being predictable?
So, there are many predictabilities when it comes to VR, one of which you can immediately tell in most horror maps just by looking around is how dark it is going to be. One thing that a lot of starting out horror content creators will do is they'll go, oh, if it's dark, it's scary. It's not scary, it just becomes annoying. As, don't get me wrong, darkness can be scary. You can hide things in it, you can build up ambience with it, you can create an atmosphere with darkness. But if it is just completely dark, it stops being scary very quickly and it starts becoming, ugh, where's the thing, where do I go? That is one of the many things that horror does wrong. I've got an entire list of things you can do wrong with horror. But one of the bigger ones is don't have a pitch black map. Unless you are building your map around the idea of it being pitch black like you're being blind. Which there is one which I did like, but I didn't finish it. I can't remember why. But for the most part, don't do pitch black. Have good lighting. Good lighting mixed with darkness is something that will make good ingredients to make a horror. But it's not something that should be the main ingredient of your horror. It only needs to be part of it.
Okay. So you mentioned you have a list of things that you could do wrong with horror. Would you mind giving us some of the items on that list?
So, besides darkness, you also have the what I call the long hallway expectation, where you have a long hallway. It's pretty obvious something's going to happen in it. If you've got a long hallway, it's either I'm going to be cutting 5 minutes out of my video, or there's a jump scare at the end of it. There's no in between.
Hmm.
So that's another one. Doing long hallways, you can do them somewhat correctly. Not official, sorry, on. It's Crispy tried to do it with the Smile Room, where you have the long hallway leading to the painting at the end. That one's quite good at unsettling you, but you know what's going to happen at the end of that hallway, which can be good dread, but only when it's done correctly. It's very difficult to do a long hallway scare, because you can just kind of brace yourself and just tank through it, and it's like, oh, that was it. Another one that I really wish that a lot of people would kind of get right, but it is also very difficult, is the horror maze. Horror mazes are very, very difficult to do correctly. Because the thing about horror is it needs to stay scary but short. You need to be able to keep it in a contained experience, but putting it into a maze, if you're stuck in that maze for even a minute too long, the scariness is gone in an instant, and all you're doing is rolling your eyes and going, "Get me out. I'm tired of being here. Let me leave."
Hmm.
The monsters stop being scary, they start being annoying. The thing you're looking for starts being something that you just want to break over your knee. The door you wish you could just rip off the hinge. That type of thing.
Hmm. Okay.
Like, mazes are just very difficult to do correctly.
Okay. No, I take it you've
Another
done one.
one...
Oh, sorry.
sorry.
You continue. My bad.
No, it's fine, it's fine. But another one is the walking simulator, where nothing happens. You need to have something to do. You can't just have, here's point A, point B, walk to it, and maybe you'll have a boo here and there. You need to actually have some sort of actual build here. You need to have, is it adventure, is it escape room? What is this map you are building, and can you make it an actual place rather than can you go from this side of the pool to that side of the pool without any jump scare hiding in the bushes getting you? That type of thing. Another one that I just hate is the puzzle room that just stays far too long, and I have a prime example of this. So in the Smile Room, there are the 3 rooms at the end. You have the playground, the basement, and you have the sun room, which I'll call it because it doesn't have an official name. Are you familiar with those rooms?
Yes, I've played them.
So I'll take the basement room as the prime example here. So in the basement room, you have to play a game of hide and seek. You are playing a hide and seek with who I affectionately call the gay clown. And it is a 4-round system. You search 4 times, he searches 4 times. You win, you leave. Fairly straightforward. However, once you start, it is very easy for the clown to find you because you have to basically lock yourself into a corner and hope he doesn't spot you, which there are broken spots. There's always going to be a spot where he can never find you, which is easily abused, but no one finds those on their first run, unless you are very, very lucky, 1 in a million. And he catches you, it's like, okay, I'll do it again. You play again, you get caught. It's like, okay, I'll try again, play, get caught, try again, play, get caught, try again. You start hating that clown and wanting to rip his face off. And you are stuck in this room until either 15 minutes has passed from the fail-safe, or you manage to beat that clown. And as someone who has spent a lot of time in the Smile Room, it's something I spent a lot of time doing with my friend, where we'd go to the Smile Room and spook people and just typically test out horror on them, which was always fun. We would see them most times rage quit and leave in the basement because they would get stuck and they would not be able to progress because they were locked in a room. And they were no longer scared of the room, they were no longer scared of the clown. they were frustrated and they did not like the experience anymore because they were stuck.
So this list of yours is stuff you've accumulated over the course of a lot of different experiences, I take it.
Yes, there are many different experiences. There will be many similarities. For example, the horror maze. There are many, many maps that will use horror mazes, and 90% of them will be bad, unfortunately. Like, doing a good horror maze is probably one of the hardest things to do in horror, in my opinion. Getting a maze done correctly for horror, but the stuck in a room with no escape unless X time passes or beat X monster is just another one which I've seen far too many people just go, they're done, and they'll go play something else.
Okay. So I'll ask these last couple of questions before we start wrapping up. First of which is the name you use in VRChat, where'd it come from and why do you still use it?
So, the name I have is currently Zom_B. It's not my original, unfortunately. So back when I initially joined into VRChat, I was actually quite lucky to claim the original zombie name, as you can't have doubles, but I managed to claim capital ZOMBIE, one word. It was great. I held the original zombie. But through, unfortunately, a couple of unfortunate people and developing a bit of a stalker issue, I changed my name and went into hiding for a bit. And once that was dealt with, and I was able to change my name back, unfortunately, I was unable to reclaim the original zombie name title. So I settled for second best and went with Zom-B, which is often mistaken for Zombi, which I admit I shouldn't have capitalized the B on B, but a bit late now.
Fair enough. And the avatar you're using, what made you choose it? Why do you use it? Is there anything about it that means anything to you?
So, what I'm using is currently a customized Rusk. I had this one put together mostly, and then I customized it more myself after. But typically I didn't used to wear Rusks. I used to wear a avatar named Lucas, not the one from Resident Evil. This one was a cryptid. But I wore him a lot when I was with my girlfriend, and after the breakup, I just couldn't bring myself to wear him anymore, so I was like, alright, well, let me find a new avatar to wear, and so I started looking around, and I eventually found a Rusk wearing this coat. And the coat was comfortable. It was nice to wear. It had a nice scarf. It was just cozy clothing in a small avatar, so I decided, yeah, I'll wear this, and I just didn't stop wearing it.
Okay. Well, again, Zombie, thank you so very much for coming on. It was an absolute honor to be able to hear your tale and pick your brain a bit, so thank you.
It was wonderful being here. Thank you for having me. There will be many more things I get to experience in horror and many more things to tell. Maybe at some point I'll come back. Who knows?
Well, you're always welcome back here. Where can the audience find you if they wish to find you?
So, I have a YouTube channel which is named The Traveling Zomble. Not a zombie, I know it's weird, but I guess I watched too much Soviet Womble in the past, so I was like, yeah, I'll be the Traveling Zomble, why not?
Okay. Well, that will be in the description for you to find. If you're on YouTube, if you scroll down the video and go to description and show more, we have a section labeled guest links. It'll be right there for you to find. If you're on Spotify, it'll be in the episode description, same place, same label. Feel free to go over there and show Zombie here some love. And this is where we interact with you, the audience member. We'll ask you a question. First of which, what is your favorite horror experience? I'll tell you, I mentioned mine earlier. It was Resident Evil Biohazard in VR. It was the first time I actually hopped into a VR horror experience. And I'll be honest with you, it was very different, scared the shit out of me in terms of like being immersed in the experience. It was my first time like being immersed in a horror experience. So that was mine. Heavily suggest playing it if you have the luxury of having a PlayStation VR. Or not. It's kind of janky in terms of like the screen effect. But with that said, I'd love to hear yours. And Thank you very much for joining us here today. We'll see you in the metaverse later, folks.
Step into the game, feel the rush ignite. Digital battlegrounds, neon in the night. Adrenaline surges, heartbeats collide. Ready for the challenge, no place to hide. The virtual gauntlet awaits. Dive into the fray. Feel the power, feel the thrill, light up the way. In this realm of fights, where legends are made. Push the limits, let the fire invade.
I wonder if you can ride the train and go inside the fucking over there. That'd be cool.
That would be cool. How big
It
that wall is,
goes
though.
in there and goes around. Why? And it goes around.
Oh, it does. Holy shit.
Fuck yeah, it goes fucking around. I don't know where it goes. Like I said, I just got here. I don't know where everything is.
Huh.
I have to check this place out.
Definitely. We're going to have to...
There's another one. There's another one I got to show you that It's
Oh?
called the. Yeah, hold on. Another one is called the Cozy Woods. That one's cool.
Oh, okay. We're definitely going to check that out, too. There's a bunch we're going to have to check out.
Yeah, there's some new ones in.